Breen now is on the wing position on the outer side, takes his kick. Not a bad one, in towards centre half forward once again. They're looking for Baldock all right, knocked away by Gabalic. Comes down here to young Davis. Here's Baldock now, Mr Magic. He goes away, but a free kick has been paid to Alan Davis. Alan Davis takes his kick. Oh, it's a long one too. It's going to the goal square. They face a mark. Kevin Neale has put it through. Neale marked from behind and put it right through on the first goal of the game. Came up after 3 minutes of play. The first goal to the Saints. There he is, Cowboy Neale from South Warrnambool.
Nice to catch up with Jamie Cox earlier about the developments of a few of the pathways within the St Kilda system, most notably the AFLW, which does kick off on the 9th of February with St Kilda taking on the Western Bulldogs. As we set off the top, unfortunately, the introduction for our next guest is one that is shared for too few. We certainly hope that others will earn this moniker one day, but St Kilda Premiership star Barry Breen joins us, the first Saint to play 300 games, also captained the club, and a rather fitting tribute or active support for a Premiership teammate in recent weeks. Kevin Cowboy Neale, recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and Barry Breen was able to trump up the support of a number of ex-Saints. I think there was up to 40 in attendance at a recent gathering to pay tribute and to pay their respects to a friend in Kevin Cowboy Neale, who is doing it tough at the moment. Barry, thanks for joining us.
Darren, Nick, Aaron, thanks for having me.
Now, I guess how that all sort of came about, and when you found out that Kevin was doing it reasonably tough, and I think it's fair to suggest that through the history of the football club, there would hardly be a more popular figure than Cowboy.
No, he's up there definitely in that echelon, and was a great player, great bloke, and we'd been mates till we played our first game together. So we've shared a fair bit together over the years, and it's funny how when you find out that Cowboy has Alzheimer's, and you look back and I speak to Cowboy fairly regularly, and then just one phone call I think I remember most was I rang him. I said, "Mate, g'day, how you going?" And it took him 5 minutes, or he couldn't work out who it was, and I didn't realise, but later on that was the start of it, and that hence the lunch and trying to recognise Cowboy before he forgets all of us.
Now, myself, Darren and Nick are very much from a different generation. We grew up with seeing the end of Tony Lockett, Nick Revolt, and that sort of thing. Just in comparison, how big was he to the club compared to them back in the day?
Well, Nick and Plugger, I mean, they're icons of the game, and Cowdy was. I mean, he played his first game at 18, and he kicked 5 goals in the grand final in '66, and won goal kicking a couple of times, and then went down back and played on Hudson and others, and he was just, in his time, for his size and how he played the game, was quite extraordinary, and he was quick for a big man, he was strong, great mark, good kick when he wasn't kicking for goal, and as most of them are today anyway, but he was an elite player, there's no doubt about that.
Barry, obviously, for us younger supporters of the club that weren't around to watch him play, we've all heard the name Cowboy Neale. We've all seen kind of highlights, and we know that he's a revered man in the history of the football club. But as someone who's known him really well for majority of both of your lives, yeah, exactly right. Can you tell us a bit about Cowboy Neale, Kevin Neale, the person rather than the player?
Look, he was a personality, Cowboy, and if in the old days when you'd go to Geelong, or you had a long bus ride, or whatever the case may be, he was a great storyteller. He remembered, he could tell jokes from Cardinia Park back to Moorabbin, and then sitting in the bus having a beer until midnight, he would continue those stories. He just had that ability to tell a joke, and someone tells me a joke, I forget it in 5 minutes. Cowboy, it never ever forgot a story, but he was just a lovable. There was not a mean bone in his body off the field, if you know what I mean. And even on the field, there was not a mean bone in his body. He was talented. He whacked Hudson in the '71 grand final, but that was just a perfect moment. But he was a clean footballer. but you didn't want to get in his way. But as a person, he was first class. He was a basic bloke. He came from Warrnambool. He was an apprentice bootmaker in those days. Did he ever have a really, really high-powered job? No, but he worked for a lot of people, and all the people he worked for loved him. And he worked for me at the Sydney Swans when I was CEO there, and no one says a bad word about Cowboy, and that is that's a credit to his character and what sort of a person he is.
Can that be best summed up by the attendance of Peter Hudson at the event you organised a couple of weeks ago? Now, obviously, there are some great St Kilda names there. Peter Hudson, not a great St Kilda name, a champion of the game, but you talk about that grand final where Hudson comes in with 147 for the season and looks like he's going to hold the record himself for the most goals in a campaign. He still shares that record, but as you say, Cowboy, as folklore has it, stood up and said he can't kick goals if he's unconscious. He belts him. But the fact that Peter Hudson was still in attendance and they still obviously had that bond must say a lot about his character.
That's right. And when I spoke to Hutto and said, mate, will you come? And he said, he said, yes, I'd love to come, and if all my commitments enable me to. And he did. And he just had the best time while he was there. And Cowboy obviously recognised that Hutto was there. And Hutto, I mean, there's Hutto's in the top 10 of all time, and just a lovely person as well. And it was, again, the recognition of Cowboy's character that someone like Peter Hudson would come to an event like that.
Now, looking back at the final story, I do remember watching a little while ago when it came out after the 50 years.
Yep.
Do you recall Brian Terracosi talking about how the whole day went? Players all did everything, and then he said that you basically took all the fanfare away by kicking a point. Has Cowboy ever mentioned the fact that, yes, he did kick 5 goals and he's trying to work out why maybe he isn't at the front of it all?
Well, I mean, that's Sarah, and Sarah and I, we're good mates, and we speak a lot, and I was over there earlier in the year. Sarah played a great game in the back pocket. Cowboy played a great game at full forward and kicked 5 goals. I played 5. I kicked 5 points. So without any of those contributions, we don't win the game. But it does. I mean, they must be very sick of just when a grand final is mentioned, I get the accolades. Yep. But that's footy, but we all recognise everybody played a very important part in making that game a success for us. And it doesn't matter, it was Jimmy Reed, Jeff Moran, John Bingley. John Bingley did a great job. Roger Head did a great job in the back pocket. We all contributed something on the day, and that's the most important thing.
Talking about that game, obviously, it was a long time ago. How does having the most famous moment in the football club's history sit with you? 50 odd years later. I mean, all things going well, 8 or 9 years ago, there could have been a new greatest memory when Brendan Goddard took that mark and kicked the goal.
Correct.
Held on for 90 more seconds. That probably takes the mantle. But how does that sit with you? 53 years later.
Look, I'm grateful. It's too long, but it's look. Some people say to me, Breen, if you hadn't kicked that point, you would just be in a bricky's labour or something like that. To me, I didn't complete university, but my football career was my university degree, and it taught me a lot, being around a whole bunch of people that had all sorts of skills. So I'm very grateful for the fact that it was me, and I don't dwell on it, but as time goes by, it's bigger than Ben-Hur or bigger than Texas, and we just want the next one to happen, and then it gets pushed into the background a little bit. But it's just one of the iconic moments of Australian football, and for me, I'm extremely grateful that it was me, and I hope I'm humble enough about it to appreciate it, acknowledge my teammates, and I think I do that.
A final one from me, and I guess it's a two-parter. You spoke about Cowboys stories, and I heard a few regalings that he was still a bit cheeky on that particular day, saying he had no recollection of belting Hudson, but we all obviously knew that he did have a memory of that. But how often? So how was he on the day in terms of obviously knowing that everyone was there, George Young from WA and Carl Dittrich and all of these people? And I guess the second part, now that Darryl Baldock and Alan Jeans are no longer with us, and it's getting harder and harder. For you Premiership players, how frequently do you see each other?
Well, not a lot, because we're scattered all over the countryside, as you just said, Perth, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales, wherever. Cowdy was okay on the day, and I made sure that he was, because everybody who came, I said, Cowdy, do you know who that is? And somebody didn't, because we've all changed. There was a lot of guys there that weren't well-known names in terms of a lot of time at St Kilda, but like Juddy came, and Juddy played alongside Cowboy in the grand final, and a lot of blokes wouldn't recognise Juddy today. But I said, mate, that's Juddy. I said, who's that? He said, no, I told him. And I said to him a number of times, I said, do you know why we're here, mate? No, we don't. I don't know. I said, we're all here because of you. And I said that a number of times to him, and then when I acknowledged everybody that came and made the effort to get there, I said, Cowdy, when he's sitting there with Georgie, I said, mate, you know why we're all here? No. I said, we're all here for you. And that was an emotional time of the day. And Georgie was emotional about it. She couldn't say. I said, Georgie, you want to say something? She couldn't. And Cowdy was very emotional about it as well. But he knew why we were there in the end. And I think that was the most important thing.
Now, stepping away from the obvious, what is the one thing that sticks out to you from your career, your time at the Saints, on field, off field? Obviously, we know what the one big thing would be, but what is something else that's just not obvious to anyone else that you just remember vividly?
Oh, look, that's a hard question. I had 18 years there. Lots of highs, lots of lows. The highs always outlast the lows. And some players who, at St Kilda or other clubs, that have a low or get something happens to them and they get annoyed or dirty on the club and don't come back. There's lots of reasons why I should be dirty on the club. Left a lot of money there in 1982, $65,000. But I would never ever get dirty on the St Kilda Football Club. You may have a point about certain individuals, but you never ever take it out on the football club, because the football club is the supporters and all the people that contribute over many, many years of the history of the St Kilda Football Club. You cannot say, I am not going back to that place, or I've wiped them, because you would be slapping the face of all those people that have followed that football club for 150 years, and I'd never do that. And that's probably the highlight. Just that I'm part of the structure of the footy club, part of the history of the club. I really treasure that, and treasure the people that I've met along the journey. And that's probably the best thing. All the people you meet, your teammates, the highs and lows, forget grand finals or finals or 300 games or club records, captain, whatever that may be, Hall of Fame. It doesn't matter. It's the people that you meet and that you retain their friendship over 50 years. It's the best part of any football club.
Barry, you kind of touched a bit on it. I think fans and supporters and members are the same. You look back at the history of our football club, and it's very much a tragic history. Over 150 years, and often, fans and supporters will get down on the club, and there are threats made. I'm tearing up my membership. I'm never coming back. I'm done with this footy club, etc. But we all do. We all come back the next year, and we all love the club. And what is it from your perspective, from an ex-player, a premiership player, a 300 gamer, former captain? What is it about our football club that has this effect on supporters and we bleed red, white and black. What is it about our footy club that's so special?
Well, I've barracked at St Kilda since I was 4 years of age. My dad came from Ireland. He took me to the Junction Oval when I was 3 or 4. I spent all that time in the 50s following St Kilda when they didn't win a game. When I was the only guy at school, kid at school, who barracked for St Kilda, and you got ridiculed for it. you have to have a certain strength of character to follow St Kilda through the highs and the lows. As you said, there have been lots of tragedies and lots of bad decisions made in my time and certainly prior to my time and after my time. But the thing is now, I think they're on the right track, and the administration and what they're trying to achieve, Moorabbin and all that sort of thing, is setting the club up for a good future. We had a good time. We lost the plot. We got it back. We lost it again. But I think now we are heading towards a better future. But it's really the tragedies of the footy club that makes St Kilda supporters, and they always live in hope. And that's what they've done for 150 years. We're waiting for that next premiership. We should have won 2 or 3 after 66. We didn't for a whole bunch of reasons. It's just St Kilda seems to attract tragedy. I don't know. I hope it goes away, but that's part of the character of the footy club, which makes it unique. And people are just waiting for that moment, and hopefully it'll be very soon.
Hopefully, indeed. Barry, thank you for giving us some time this evening. We really appreciate your time. Well done on all you've done for Cowboy, and most importantly, all you've done for the club.
Thanks very much, mate. Good to talk.